Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 115 of D&D Discussions, a podcast for players and DMs alike, where we cover a wide variety of topics to help you with your games. I'm your host, Ryan Reeder, and as you can tell, it's late. Guess what? Ben's with me too. Hey, Ben.
Hey, no, it's not only late, but I mean, your mind is just so full of so much information that,
God,
like, it's pushing out like actual grammar and correct words in order to just fill it or to absorb it. Or see, even I'm having issues.
Yeah.
So much is going on.
Yeah, like our notes, the top is just labeled all the news in capital letters. So this is going to be like part 2 of 3, right?
Yeah.
Because
maybe 3, maybe 4.
Maybe 4.
If they
maybe
keep
4
going,
it's pretty ridiculous. So what we're gonna do tonight is we're gonna go over a chunk of new content for the 2024 D&D edition, which we will call 5.5 or 5.1 or 6 or 2024. It really doesn't matter at this point. It's the new stuff. It's the new stuff. But we're also gonna do a little mini monster fixer, just so you can have some evergreen content in these as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's always fun. So
if you're going through and watching all these videos too, then you probably know some of this stuff. This is really for, us to kind of talk about because we like this stuff. And then also to, present some of the cool stuff that we find too. So, instead of giving you everything that you've heard of already, here's some other stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're listening to this in 5 months, then this is probably going to be old stuff. So.
Or you're just reading along with it with the book.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Ben, we got a lot to talk about. Let's jump in. So there are several classes that we're going to talk about, but then there's also some crafting and spell stuff that got released recently as well. So we're going to talk about the Warlock, the Druid, the Wizard, the Ranger, and then spells and crafting. Whew. All right. So let's dive in. Let's start talking about the Warlock. Just as a baseline. So for the new 2024 edition, all classes now get their subclasses at 3. So I know we had this conversation after the last time we recorded, because Warlocks getting their subclass at 3 kind of sounds a little weird on the surface.
It kind of does, but back when this was in the Unearthed Arcana, we kind of talked about the idea of like, oh, well, you're kind of getting powers and like maybe a preemptive deal of some sort, or maybe you're like shopping around or something like that. So like, RP wise, it can work and make sense. But
casual power shopping.
Yeah. But on top of that too, it could be like you're getting a taste of it before you make your final pact with your deity, or you have your pre-pact and then you're like double down like, oh yeah, no, I like these powers. Let's go with it or something like that.
I mean, or if you have your character planned out, you just play it like you're in that pact from the beginning.
Exactly.
Right. That's kind of the long and short of it. So Warlocks, they got a lot of new. One of the just to like preface this, one of the things like the words they kept using in the video is just improvements, enhancements, new, etc. And so it's one of those things where my mind, as I'm watching all these and listening to all these things, I go, is 2024 just a bunch of power creep? And it's not, right. A lot of this of what they're doing is fixes, but it is also some of that.
Yeah.
So I'm actually very interested to hear once we get to the new monster manual, because apparently a lot of the creatures were adjusted from a CR perspective, even if they didn't change to be more what the intended was. So I'm interesting to see how that'll stack up, or
Mhm.
how less powerful a 2014 character playing in a 2024 campaign would feel potentially as well. So that's kind of interesting, but that's, neither here nor there. I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, because they keep Jeremy Crawford, who's doing all these with Todd, just keeps talking about new enhancements. But we made it better, etc.
Yeah, but on top of that too, like a lot of the stuff that they're talking about are things that are, I mean, definitely enhancements, but they're adding more like fun to the classes and the subclasses. Like they're removing restrictions that back in 2014 they put in place because, there's really no kind of rhyme or reason behind it. And as they've been able to kind of go through and just relook at everything when they're making their enhancements and their updates and everything and their power creep, they're able to, I mean, more than anything, I think balance between the different classes, but on top of that too, really give them so much more of their own identity, as well as like looking at all the different subclasses that they're including in the book, as well as the classes themselves, finding their shortcomings where they are comparatively to, like, other classes or whatever. Because as we've gone through some of these videos, some of them even say, it's like, look, they were in a very good spot. We didn't have to change a lot, but here are the things that we did fix or change because it makes more sense and it adds more fun to it.
Yeah.
And like when we get to the wizard, that's definitely a big one that falls under. But the idea of them, taking things that didn't exactly fully work and then like enhancing and adding more to it is something that's great. Like with the warlocks, like the eldritch invocations is a big change, like you're able to get them now at level 1, which is great, but
Which
even
makes
more
sense.
so, like they affect more things than just eldritch blast, which is a huge difference and a huge upgrade. So the fact
Yeah.
that, you know, one of the big reasons why I didn't want to play Warlock is because I wasn't a fan of only having 2 spell slots, but also knowing that if we come into combat, my combat is essentially Eldritch Blast, and that's it. But with all these different enhancements and stuff, you have a lot more options and different things that you can kind of choose and play with. And to me, like versatility in any class is important so that you're not just stuck doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, no, it seems like for all these class changes, streamlining and player choice seem to be the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Allowing it so that you have far less of those like wasted turn feels, like lots of things moving to bonus actions, uh things that like waste your whole turn not being actions anymore, like that type of stuff. We've talked about that a lot, and so I'm really happy to see that design
Mm-hmm.
making its way in. And like just like you said, and just out of the player choice thing, the Eldritch Invocations, there's more of them. uh some of them have level prerequisites now, so that they don't bombard you with a lot, but they added more,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool. At level 2, they added something called Magical Cunning, which is a way to get your pack magic back sooner than just a shorter long rest, because they knew that warlocks were feeling constrained on their spell casting. Um, with, as you just mentioned, limited spell slots. And I mean, I can totally vouch for that. My last campaign, we had a warlock. Our poor warlock was just like, let's long rest, guys. Let's long rest, or short rest, guys. Short rest, please. Short
Mm-hmm.
rest. And it's just like, it's not necessarily their fault. That was a mechanical failing of the class, because they just burned their stuff so fast that, because you either hold it and don't get to use it ever, or you burn it and then it's just like, no, we can't short rest, or no one wants to short rest, or okay, we got to short rest again because the warlock needs their spell slots back.
Yep.
So no, I think that is a really good thing that they can get some of those back. Pact boons are now invocations. You can get them at 1. They used to be mutually exclusive, but now there's more that you can get, and this is like the big choice you get to make at level 1 instead of your subclass,
Mhm.
since the subclasses are all level 3.
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
Totally works. Pact of the Chain has like more spooky stuff that you can have, like a skeleton familiar instead, or like a slayed tadpole, or just kind of different things because they're kind of leaning into that with some really just crazy things. And they've added like a bunch more familiars with different stamp blocks and everything in the player's handbook, so that you have random things to kind of choose from, which I think is pretty great.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things they mentioned is any of the stat blocks you need for your class are going to be in the player's handbook
Hmm. Yeah.
now. You're not going to have to jump over to the monster manual, other than like maybe some higher level druid stuff,
Yeah.
right? But otherwise, they're including a lot of those types of things straight in the player's handbook. So that's a big quality of life change too, to make it easier.
Hmm. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, the Pact of the Blade gets invocations that enhance it. Pact of the Tome is really like aimed so much more at spell casting. So again, this goes back into limits with spell casting. Now there's like different ways that you can modify cantrips and stuff.
Yeah, they mentioned Ray of Frost specifically, like being
Knocking
able
people
to
back. Yeah.
modify it with a knockback. So then you get the slow and a knockback. I like that they clarified the whole Eldritch Blast. We know that's a super tropey warlock, but we know that it was also optimal.
Hmm.
So we want to make other things viable,
Exactly.
so that you don't have to like hurt yourself just from a flavor perspective, so you don't use Eldritch Blast.
Yeah, exactly. And it's made it so that I'm kind of like, oh, Warlocks, huh? Tell me more, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Big, huge one that I love, absolutely love, is you can actually call upon your patron now.
that's huge.
Can you
That's
believe
huge.
that
Like,
there wasn't anything in there for that, where clerics are just like, oh
no,
yeah, I'm going to
nothing
commune and all
mechanical.
that stuff? Yeah. Now you literally call on the patron that gives you your powers, that it should be tasking you to do things and kind of like forcing you to do stuff because you made that deal. And I can't believe, like, when I heard that in the video, I couldn't believe that it wasn't actually baked in already.
Yeah, because that's just something we would do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or when I've had a warlock in campaigns before, like I've had multiple warlocks over several campaigns, and that's just something like the patron interacted with them. There's no mechanic for it, and there was no necessarily mechanic for them to like start up that conversation. But the whole point of warlocks and patrons is this is usually lower than like the god level,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is just a powerful entity, like a dragon, like a genie, like a demigod, like a powerful fey
Archfey. Yeah.
creature. Yeah. This is not like the high and lofty god, right? That you have to have some sort of divine intervention to fully interact with. So I love that that is being built in, because that probably should have been there all along.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. On top of that, too, the Warlock spell list has been expanded. It's still not like as gigantic as a wizard's, but it's been expanded. So you have a bunch of, extra stuff. But even more so, the fact that they went through, they had to be careful with what they added to the spell list, because they needed to kind of see how it would actually interact with the pact magic. So anything that's actually on the spell list, they've actually gone through, they've really thought about it, and how things can kind of work together, as opposed to butting heads magic wise with what your pact is going through.
Yeah, and we'll touch on all the subclasses briefly, and for this class and all the classes. Um, Obviously, we don't have time to go over the note by note section, but again, Golden Spider 666 on Reddit has done a great job breaking the videos down, and we
Mhm.
will have links to all those if you want to dive in to like a bullet pointed list for your favorites, right? For what all they talked about.
Mhm.
And again, we don't have all the information yet. This is just them talking about this. We don't have a lot of the concrete stuff beyond what they've mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see like we have no idea what the actual mechanics for talking to your patron are. We just know that they're there.
It's there
Right?
now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there now. So subclasses for the Warlock are Archfey, Celestial, Fiend, and Great Old One. They said the Archfey is a major enhancement in addition to the Great Old One. So like the Celestial and the Fiend, those were more tweaks, but the Archfey and the Great Old One are kind of almost new subclasses. And they said this was because they really liked the flavor that was there for those subclasses in the original 2014,
Mhm.
but mechanically, it didn't really work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Uh, and
And
so this time around, they are really shoring up the mechanics, and this goes for all the different classes they've done too. They talked about this a lot, or this was a very similar vein in some of the classes, subclasses they redid, where it's just like the feel was there, but the mechanics just didn't back up the fantasy.
yeah, and with Archfey, just starting to kind of jump into that, a lot of the theming and stuff revolves around kind of like, trickster stuff. Like there's a lot of teleporting going on with apparently everything Fey in all of the classes. If it's Fey, you get to teleport, which is pretty cool. But like different things where like you can like vanish and reappear, popping around the battlefield and stuff like that, as well as like different extra effects that you can do when you teleport and do different things. One of the cool things that they kind of mentioned is like, if you can get people to attack you, then that actually will start causing different reactions and things as well based on your subclass of Archfey, or your Archfey patron. When you get hit, maybe it makes you turn invisible. Maybe it's teleports you and someone else somewhere else, or this and that and stuff. Maybe you just kind of hit him with psychic damage when that happens, and it's kind of cool, the idea of Warlocks actually kind of being in the thick of it and everything, but kind of jumping around and being a difficult target, not because they have a high AC, but because of the mechanics involved in their actual play style.
And this was kind of this one of the, based on the other classes we went over last episode, the one of the themes I've been starting to see is there's a lot more movement based stuff. Actually really excites me from a tactical and strategic perspective, because in 2014 I feel like the DM has to do a lot more work to really get players to move their characters around, because once like melee happens, you kind of get stuck there until someone dies. And if you have your ranged character, they kind of just stay in one spot and just start shooting everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Combat can be very static just as a baseline. Um, and then I feel like a lot of the onus is on the DM to really make it so that the players want to move or need to move or cause the movement. But now we're starting to see a ton of stuff in this 2024 edition, like lots of teleporting, like the World Tree Barbarian, lots of teleporting there, Archfey Warlock, lots of teleporting movement based stuff, where knockback type stuff for these invocations or slow, right? We're seeing that with weapon mastery as well. We're seeing it with the rogue, we're seeing it just with the weapon mastery in general, pushing, right? And being able to add on stuff to that. So it feels like they're really trying to open the tactical options quite a bit more. to make especially combat more dynamic and interactive from a player side of
Mhm.
things, and not just putting that all on the DM,
Yeah.
which I really like.
Yep, definitely. I agree with that too, because it is kind of frustrating when, I mean, especially when you have monsters that only, multi attack and then that's kind of it, so that they don't really have much movement involved with them. Trying to creatively think of something to, make the battle more dynamic can be real rough with bland things. And the fact that there's so much more movement and everything being added in already just, you know, accentuates the fact that this is a dynamic battle. Things are going on, and you kind of need to be aware and pay attention, and also use your own stuff to contribute to that, like, kind of chaos that happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I am looking forward to that, and we'll see that more as we go through some of these classes, but that does seem to be a theme for sure.
Hmm.
Next subclass is the Celestial Patron. This is obviously kind of playing counter to the, I guess, default look of the Warlock as being, super evil. This is kind of like the maybe you're not getting your power from a god, but maybe a powerful angel,
Hmm.
right? Maybe a powerful some powerful celestial being. So that's pretty cool. Getting spells. This is more probably the healy hurdy subclass. You get like guiding bolt, cure wounds, aid, kind of leaning into this is the helpful warlock or the support warlock or the more maybe good aligned type warlock.
Yeah, the not religious, but believes in a higher power kind of warlock.
Yeah, or even just like the hand of judgment type thing,
Yeah,
right? Where this is you are the instrument of this celestial being much more so than like a cleric or a
yeah,
paladin being with the god connection.
yeah. In fact, I think they even mentioned something like a celestial assassin, which is kind of a cool idea if you think about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Next we have the Fiend. This one was actually, they said, largely kept intact, other than just some enhancements. There's that word again.
Hmm.
Uh, throughout. So basically, it's more just enhancing some of the existing features. The tankiness the Fiend had in Baldur's Gate 3 from the ability to gain temp HP when you killed an enemy is here now. That's also something they talked about several times. Is Jeremy Crawford was just like, while I was playing Baldur's Gate 3,
Yeah.
I either liked this thing and was like, cool, let's add it, or oh, this is frustrating, or this design is frustrating, and it just feels frustrating more now that I'm playing it kind of in the real time. We need to change this. So
Hmm. Yeah,
it,
which
it was
is
really fun to hear
amazing.
that.
So
Yeah,
great
it
that
was
that
really fun
happened.
to hear that. But yeah, they said the biggest enhancement to the Fiend is the Dark One's Blessing. Now you gain its benefit whether you're the one who kills the foe or if someone else does within a certain distance, to make it easier to get that temp HP. So this is like the tankier, more hardy warlock.
Hmm. Yeah, and last up, the Great Old One, which, from what they said, it is essentially a new subclass. Even though they had a Great Old One subclass before, this is new. I mean, they completely rebuilt this thing. Um, it- they said that like, as it was kind of more like the Archfey, and the flavor wasn't really like mechanically driven. So they just started, going through changing things and poured in a whole bunch of ooze and psionic power, which I think is actually a really kind of cool way to look at it. I mean, it has different things like, summoning aberrations, which, I mean, you can summon a mind flayer with this now, not like, a stat block normal mind flower flayer that, you see running
Still pretty
around
cool
on a
though.
Nautilus. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty great. You have a whole bunch of like different psionic spells and everything that are thrown onto the spell list. There's like a new create thrall, which is, it's a brand new thing, even though there was a version of it with the same name. Um, I mean, Eldritch Hex are neat, are in there, clairvoyant combatant stuff for different like psychic spells. You can like do enchantment and illusion stuff without verbal or somatic components, which I think is really cool because, you know, just projecting that stuff with your mind. I mean,
Yeah, it really plays into that fantasy a lot more, which I like. I'm staring at you and you're dying slowly because I'm
exactly.
doing all this stuff.
Yeah. So awakened mind, you know, lets you have a connection between your mind and someone else's, but with clairvoyant combatant, which is something that they have out, you can make that connection like go bad, which I think is pretty cool. And I mean, just overall, like there's a lot of like heightening damage that you can do with things like that. And there's a lot of, you know, just the psionic stuff that's just been added to this, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. It's really cool. And it seems like a really fun way to go.
Yeah, no, I think overall it sounds like, because I've never really wanted to play a warlock for a lot of the same reasons that you didn't. The whole the spell slot thing, the little weird in between caster type stuff, but this does sound a lot more interesting and make me more interested in actually playing warlock.
Yeah, a lot of the mechanics that they've kind of added to it and everything really make it feel very separate and not just like a limited wizard or sorcerer. And I'm really wanting to get that player's handbook in my hand so I can really dig in and see a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the druid real fast. The druid has been changed fairly significantly.
Yeah.
Um,
Now
the biggest thing, let's
it-
just get it out of the way.
yeah, well, first of all, if you remember, the Unearthed Arcana that they had for Druid was horrible. Absolutely
Yeah,
horrible.
that first version was not good.
Yeah.
Not good at all.
Yeah. So this version though, I mean, jump right in. You know what the people want to know, or you
Yeah,
know what they want to
so
hear.
the the days of wild shaping into a new pool of hit points are gone.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst, quote unquote, worst news out of all this, right?
Yeah.
But and I get why. I do understand why. From a balanced perspective, druids, especially Circle of the Moon druids, could be extremely unbalancing and make encounter building for DMs incredibly hard.
Exactly.
Because when at level, 2 or 3, I've all of a sudden got 3 pools of 30 or 40 plus hit points. That's really hard for a DM to make an encounter for that isn't just overly deadly or very, very inconsequential. So I totally understand why they did that. Now they've changed it to whenever a regular druid wild shapes, you get 1 temp HP for each druid level you have, which is, to be fair, pretty anemic. It seems like they're kind of discouraging wild shape for combat a little bit, other than Circle the Moon druid, and to more just like the social or non-combat type encounters. But they are giving benefits from it. Like now, obviously, since the HP pool is your HP pool, you can't get knocked out of form until you're dead. So that's kind of cool. Well, that could be very helpful in certain situations for sure.
And at the same time, like I get where you're coming from with, not having that extra HP and stuff. I get that, but you still have your max HP, which, I mean, one, if you roll well, that's going to be good no matter what, with, a little bonus on top of that. But it kind of helps you determine the kind of play that you're going to go in on this with. In fact, at level 1, you basically pick a new feature. It's a primal order. So you choose whether you're a warden druid or a magician. So, if you have an idea of like, okay, you're focusing on armor and martial stuff versus magic. And the thing is, instead of using the specific animal stat blocks, it's starting to use your or a lot more of your stuff instead. So like if you're wearing armor, if the thing that you change into has a lower AC than you do, you use your high AC. If you're changing into something with a higher AC, then you go with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are advantages, kind of mixed in with this new wild shape as well. It's not entirely, well, you change, but you lose all the benefits of the other kind or the old
Yeah.
way. It's just, it's different. It's going to take some adjusting, especially to all of us who really know how the old way works. But there are some things that they've kind of
Well, I
added
mean,
in that have made it a little bit of an advantage.
losing the HP is by far the biggest thing. Most of the
Mhm.
rest of the stuff is enhancements. Not
Yeah.
being able to get knocked out of form. You can talk
Yeah.
in your form now because they said from a mechanical and like lore type perspective, you're not physically turning into that animal.
Hmm.
You're basically embodying the body of that animal, but
Yeah.
you're keeping all your stuff intact. So you can actually talk now because they were saying, especially in social encounters and stuff, it made it very hard for someone, a druid who is wild shaped, to feel like they could participate, which I totally get, or being able to
I've done
talk
that
to your party.
just in
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3. I've had that issue.
Yeah, yeah, or just being able even to talk to your party. So I think that I mean that's good. You are also limited a little more now. You have a number of shapes you can learn per day or know per day.
Hmm.
And you can swap those out at a long rest. But their reasoning behind this was basically so that you know and that your DM knows like what you can turn into for the day. And that number goes up as you level as well.
Hmm.
But it's not they from the UA they changed it so it's not just a generic stat block
Yeah.
anymore. It is the actual beast stat block from the appendix or the monster manual,
Hmm.
which is good. I hated the generic
Oh yeah,
wild
exactly.
shape.
Well, this is my C form today, and
It was
yeah,
dumb.
yeah,
It was super dumb
not good at
and
all.
not near unique enough.
Hmm.
Not near unique enough. So
Yeah.
because a lot of the animal stat blocks do have cool special things that the stat block can do. So you want to be able to keep those cool special things
Hmm.
without being artificially limited. So no, that's it's still a good thing. It will make your bookkeeping less for sure. It will help your DM by knowing what you can do, and it's still fairly flexible because you can swap them out at long rests.
Yeah.
It will
Now,
just take some getting used to.
yep. Now on top of that, the wild shape is kind of more of a resource than just a wild shape. You can also use it to cast find familiar and have a companion, which I think is just really cool. You're this, druidic naturey person and stuff. You're able to, just kind of pop in an animal companion to kind of do stuff and use that spell and everything, which I think is a really great way to play a druid. Because if you're not a circle of the moon and you're not like, using your wild shape often, it's a completely wasted resource. So this at least gives you, another option for something to do. And if I remember correctly, there's like, as you get deeper in, I think it's used for one or two other things. I don't fully remember though. But it is more of a resource than just turning into something.
So some of the subclasses now have specific ways you can use wild shape
Yeah,
as a
that's what it
resource.
is.
Yeah, other than turning into stuff. And I should mention too, wild shape's a bonus action now,
Yes, for
not an action,
all druids.
which is super good because it felt really bad to like at the start of combat turn into your thing and then do nothing
Hmm.
because you had already used your action. So that's a really good change. It needed to be like that. Like I said, we're, we will see this a lot. A lot of these things being moved from actions to bonus actions, or things being like baked into the action itself. The monk is going to have a lot of that when we go over that next episode.
Hmm.
So that type of thing I love seeing because that just means Again, less wasted turns. You can do more on your turn, and you can feel more impactful.
Yep, exactly.
And more ways to use a bonus action.
Yeah.
Because let's be fair, in 2014, there were a lot of classes / subclasses that just didn't have much they could do with their bonus action.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't. So being able to have more bonus action stuff to choose from, I think is a really good call.
Yeah.
So there's 4 subclasses in the new player's handbook, just like all the classes. Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Land, Circle of the Sea, which is totally brand new,
Yep.
and Circle of the Stars.
Yeah. Well, in Circle of the Sea is kind of Circle of the Sea and Storm, so that they made a very big point of this. Of they don't want you to have to be Aquaman.
Yeah. Yeah, Circle of the Moon is still the most like wild shape oriented. It gives you get more temporary hit points. So you get 3 temporary hit points per druid level versus 1. Which is somewhat significant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you can shift in and out of forms, because you could you're getting 20, 30 extra HP per shift in your mid-ish levels, so it's not terrible, right?
Yeah.
It's more, it's more, so that's good. This is where you can get your you can use the higher AC. If the beast AC is low, you can use your own. um you get Circle of the Moon spells, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've added more like moonlight flavoring,
Yeah.
which is basically like lunar light, moonlight step. There's another teleport as a bonus action at level 10, and getting advantage on your next attack after you teleport. Level 14, getting extra radiant damage in wild shape. So I do miss the elemental forms
Yeah.
quite a bit, because those were actually super cool and kind of a fun like capstone-y type thing, or a higher level thing for druids. But otherwise, they seem to have mostly left intact and enhanced.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you know, it's definitely a huge improvement over what was in UA. But overall, like I'm actually pretty happy with where it ended up, because we knew that they had to take away those massive hit point pools. Just like paladins, yeah, you do tons and tons of damage, but to balance it out, changing smite to that bonus action spell as opposed to just a free whenever ability that uses a spell slot, sometimes you have to take a little bit of bad with a whole lot of good. And I think that for the Circle of the Moon Druid, that's kind of what's happening here. You get a little bit of bad, but with a whole lot of cool good that's been added to it as well.
Circle of the Land, again, I want to do a control F in all these and
Just do enhance.
like, yeah, whereas like how many times enhanced is used. But basically, this time around, you're not actually going to be locked into a specific land type. You're going to be able to pick the type of land that you connect with after a long rest, which is actually pretty cool, because it gives you a set of spells you can use that day as well. And you can always pick the same one, multiple times in a row. But they have arid, temperate, polar, and tropical, which is actually pretty cool. So, because from a flavor standpoint, I feel like the druid can then kind of pick based on where you are in the campaign, or make it make a little more sense, versus I picked like the desert, arid land. Oh, we're in the forest for 50 sessions.
Yeah. Back at level 3, this is what I picked. That's what there is.
Yep. So having that type of that's just another one of those like flexibility things that they've added as they've gone through. So there's a lot of I kind of like that. I think it makes more sense, honestly. Um,
Oh yeah.
but otherwise, they've retained or just improved a lot of the other stuff from the subclass.
Yeah.
But Ben, there's a brand new one called Circle of the Sea, and like you said, it's called Circle of the Sea, but they made a point to say it's Circle of the Sea and Storms because you may not be anywhere near a sea, and so they didn't want to develop something that would only be good if you were doing like a nautical themed campaign or a campaign near large bodies of water.
Yes, exactly. Which is something that's really cool. And, the thing that they realize is the fact that, you know, there's all this land stuff, the moon elements and everything, but they did absolutely nothing with the sea, which is where this kind of came from. One of the things that I love about this is the fact that, as you're kind of going through, you automatically get, um, sea and storm based magic with it, like fog cloud, gust of wind, ray of frost, thunder wave, lightning bolt. I mean, just having that stuff in your kit automatically as a caster gives you a lot of kind of versatility with just the fun stuff that you can do with that. But on top of that too, you get level 3 Wrath of the Sea. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do, using your wild shape charges that doesn't turn you into an animal. Like you can manifest a swirling ocean spray around yourself, kind of like a paladin's aura, which I think is pretty cool. Excuse me, as you level up, it gets even bigger by like 10 feet. You're able to swim up to your normal walking speed. Your storm boon is cool. You get a fly speed equal to your speed. It's just pretty awesome. On top of that too, at level 14, you get your oceanic gift. You can put that really cool swirling ocean spray around someone else. So, it really is taking that whole concept of storm and sea and just kind of mixing it together and finally flavoring a druid that way. And I absolutely love it.
And this is again one of those ways to use your wild shape as an actual resource that is not just changing shape. So that's really cool. And then finally, Circle of the Stars. This was from Tasha's, and they're pulling it into here. It's more or less the same with just a few enhancements from Tasha's, but they were fairly happy with how it went. So if you kind of go look at Circle the Stars, that should be a fair approximation of what the new one is going to look like.
Something that they kind of pointed out is that this is basically the best version of that subclass is the one that's going into the new player's handbook. So yeah, I've been in 2 different campaigns with people who've used that version of Druid, and it's a pretty strong version already. So I'm glad that
I'm in one with it one right now.
Well, perfect.
It seems to be a very popular subclass.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pretty cool. I will have to definitely say that. So very cool.
All right, let's keep moving right along. Let's jump over to the wizard. So they said they talked about the wizard being one of those classes where they're pretty happy with it. Like wizard has obviously been in a pretty good spot. Wizards are very strong. So they said, even though they have made some changes and additions to the class and the subclass, this is not going to be as big as some of the other ones. And they said a lot of what's new is going to actually come not necessarily from the class itself, but from the new spells in the spells chapter, just giving you more to be able to do. Because obviously Wizard has the largest spell list of any of the classes in the game.
Exactly. The wizard is supposed to be the toolkit that, finds and fixes the problems that they need. And a lot of what they're doing with that is, again, with all that fun stuff, they're baking in some things already, like like the ritual adept feature, like automatically, oh yeah, they're able to just do rituals. They don't need anything added on top of that. They have something new called Scholar, which, it gives them more versatility outside of combat, which I think is pretty cool. It gives them like expertise in skills like Arcana and history and stuff, talking about looking at it as, being an expert in some sort of like academic field, because if anything, wizards are nerds, book nerds. They're reading, they're researching, they're, experimenting. That's entirely what their whole thing is. Memorize spell is something pretty great, which, they're able to actually swap out a cantrip, or, wait, no, that cantrip was something else. That was, I think, one of the subclasses.
No. First level wizard has the ability to swap a cantrip every long rest spell.
Okay, yep. There we go. Yeah, so then the fifth level, the memorize spell, lets them swap out one from their spell book at a short rest. That's what that was. Okay.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a cantrip. This is an actual full-on spell.
Yeah,
so they can actually swap a spell out on a short rest. So if you prepared and you were just like, oh crap, I really should have brought this today, take a short rest, and you can swap one of those out.
Yeah, or it's like,
that would have been really handy many, many times.
Oh, it turns out we're in the elemental plane of fire. Maybe I shouldn't have fireball prepared. Swap it to something else. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's something that's great. But then going into like the subclasses, they're enhanced. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but a lot of the like kind of the flavoring, yeah, exactly. A lot of the flavoring and stuff that has been kind of added is really honing in on that certain type of magic. So like the Abjurer is, all about defensive magic, and it should be about defending themselves and others as well. So what they can do is, like have a protective barrier, and anytime that they cast an abjuration spell, it'll actually enhance that barrier that they already have on themselves. They've done certain things where, like, if you're resistant to a certain type of damage or something, that resistance goes in before it hits the barrier, as opposed to hits the barrier, depletes whatever it is, and then goes to you. So they kind of swapped out how that works, which I think just completely makes sense and should have been how it was and everything before. And I love the fact that works. You get abjuration spells when you level up for free. You get an extra abjuration spell no matter what. On top of that too, let's see, there's
the level 10 one is super cool.
Yeah, I was just about to get that. Yeah, go for it.
So this is a brand new feature at level 10 for the Abjurer, and it's called Spellbreaker. At level 10, you always have counter spell and dispel magic prepared, and you can cast dispel magic now as a bonus action. And if you cast either of those with a spell slot and it fails to counter or dispel the spell, the slot's not expended.
Yes,
they're leaning into like the good. You are I mean, his name's Spellbreaker, right? So I kind of love the flavoring there. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The whole like very defensive minded subclass for the wizard. And so it's kind of a cool mechanical and flavor option on that.
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool. It's just a fun wizarding subclass. Jumping forward, we have the diviner or divination savants, whatever you want to call it. Basically, you're going through doing more divination stuff. Same deal as before. When you level, you get an extra divination spell. I love that because, again, with wizards, that all works. There wasn't really a whole ton that they kind of covered with the diviner.
Not a lot changing.
Yeah. But you get like certain things like, dark vision. It can be extended to 120 feet if you have, dark vision already. A lot of it had to do with being able to see, like kind of metaphorically and physically and, kind of things along those lines. I do have to say that some of the artwork that they've been showing in these videos is great too. So you really should check that out. But anyways, that's completely aside the point.
Yeah, look at all the artwork in the new book. And they mentioned this in the spell chapter as well. But they said wherever they could, they took the opportunity to really showcase what the words on the page were. So that's
Mhm.
why every single class and subclass has its own key art to kind of give a little bit of an idea of what this might look like.
Yeah.
Right. And they even said, especially look at the wizard art, because the wizards will also be casting a lot of spells. And you might see which spells those are. Same for like warlock and so on and so forth. You might
Mhm.
see what those are in the little caption of the picture. There's a lot of art in the actual spells chapters as well that
Which
are depicting
is
what these spells look like.
so new and different, which I'm excited
Yeah,
about that.
very cool.
Yeah.
Very
Anyways, so jumping to the evoker, also not a whole lot of new information about that. But same deal. You get extra evocation spell per level. So this is really about like you're just throwing out damage, elementally kind of stuff and everything. But yeah, it's not changed a whole ton, but it's still a very powerful subclass. And I mean, they got a potent cantrip feature, which I think is really cool, where like not only just saving roll spells, but also like pure spell attack rolls, where if you miss, you still deal half damage. So like no matter what, you're kind of peppering them with a little bit of damage here and there. So like if I throw a firebolt but miss, it still singes them or something like that. I think that's actually a pretty cool thing if you're an evoker. And then moving forward to the illusionist, which seems so cool from everything that they've talked about on this.
This was
Um,
probably the biggest
oh
change
yeah, it's
to the
huge,
subclasses. Yeah.
huge, tons of stuff. Like they didn't use the words of it's essentially a brand new subclass like they have with some of the other like classes overall, but there's a lot of really new stuff. Like one of the best things is improved illusionist, where if you do any of your illusion spells, you don't have a verbal component to it anymore. So that means like you could be just sitting at a table in a bar, and then all of a sudden, you might be doing your somatic hand gestures or whatever. Just say you have like I don't know, a tick, or you're signing to someone or something. I don't know, who cares? But you can like make illusions happen. You can trick people with that. It's so much more of like a creative like RP setting with just that small change alone, which I think is really great. You'd be really tactical about distractions. Even more so, your range gets further out as an illusionist, meaning it's going to be a lot harder for people to actually see that you're casting this illusion, that it's something that's fake. Um, Moving further down to level 6, you get phantasmal creatures, which basically means you make an illusion of a creature, but it can also be real, which is just cool. So you're basically
Yeah, yeah.
summoning creatures and stuff with a summon beast or a summon fae. And the thing is, as an illusionist, you always have those prepared. And the way that it works is much better than 2014. So DMs, don't worry about summoned creatures. It's a lot better and a lot easier to work with than previously. Because they
Yeah.
use the
And I
rules
mean,
from Tasha's on that, if I remember correctly.
yeah, they pulled in all the like summon rules from Tasha's to make things be able to one level with you, and two not just jump a whole bunch of a single creature out on the field or have to go look up stat blocks that
Hmm.
may not be in the player's handbook, right?
Yeah.
Um one thing I wanted to mention too that I love, not only do you get the minor illusion cantrip, it's not counted against the amount of cantrips you
Hmm.
can know, uh, but you can now cast it as a bonus action,
Yes.
which minor illusion, in my opinion, is one of the most versatile, useful spells in the entire game, and it's a
Oh, agree.
cantrip.
Totally agree.
I've had so many amazing creative uses of that spell from my party. And so like having an illusionist in your party seems awesome, or as a DM absolutely terrifying, because of all the like different things they can do. Because I mean they even talked about um the whole different illusory of, you know, I make the illusory bridge over the chasm, it
Hmm.
becomes real for us, we walk over, but then when we're done walking over it's no longer real anymore and people fall.
Yeah, illusory reality is what it is. And just the idea of different things like that just blow my mind of the possibilities that you could do. The fact that, you can summon your illusory creatures. If you use a spell slot, then they're actually like, there and real, but they're like half health or something like that. I don't know. Like there's, oh my gosh, there's so much that you can do with this. Like we can't even touch on all the stuff. Like this is by far the biggest section of the wizard, like bullet point section. And they spend a ton of time talking about it. There's lots of really cool fun.
Yeah, agreed. I think that almost all the wizard stuff sounds really good. Like
Yep.
I'm a huge fan. My very first D&D character ever was a wizard. So it's real good.
Yep.
And then finally, Ben, let's move on to our last class, the Ranger.
Yeah.
This is when they literally started the video out by saying Ranger is effectively a brand new class. It has been changed so much.
Yeah. And they're not wrong. Like from everything that they've talked about with this, it is incredibly just brand new. Like all the different features and everything that they had before work entirely differently. The best thing is that Hunter's Mark is just baked in now. It's part of it. And if
still needs concentration.
Yeah, it still needs concentration.
Which I know some people will be a little disappointed about.
Yeah, but it works though, and you get a certain number of free castings of it per day, which is great. I mean, especially if you're tracking something, it's going to be a lot easier if you've got your Hunter's Mark on it, or I'm sure you can. Well, I haven't read the spell obviously, but I'm pretty sure you can still move it around. So like, you defeat your enemy, you have your new favorite enemy, which, will automatically get Hunter's Mark on it if you want to concentrate on it and stuff.
Yeah. One of the biggest things is, and I really like, you get spell casting right away at level 1.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
And that's a huge deal. I love that for like the half caster type classes, they've moved the spell casting to level 1 because I think it really gives you extra to do at level 1, which is always a good thing because level 1 is can be fairly simplistic. And 2, you can start learning that right away instead of having that jump in as an add-on later on, right? And then Rangers also get weapon mastery.
Yes.
So, and remember, weapon mastery not only works for martial weapons, weapon mastery is on your ranged weapons as well. So if you want to have a melee ranger or, the ranged ranger, you'll still be able to benefit from weapon mastery. And there's obviously, we talked about that, a lot you can do with weapon mastery. And I'm excited to see what the full list of masteries ends up being.
Same here. One thing that I think is really cool that's a new feature is Deft Explorer. Version of it was in Tasha's, but this is actually different. Basically what it does is it gives you a skill of your choice that's at level 2, plus 2 additional languages. And the idea behind it is that as a ranger, you're well-traveled. You're able to kind of, go here, go there. You learn different things, different languages and stuff, which, kind of makes sense because the ranger or the range in Ranger isn't just ranged weaponry. It's about, being an explorer, being, well-traveled, hitting your microphone, being all over the place. So it is, something that is absolutely fascinating to me. And I absolutely love it. That and your fighting style has been upgraded where you're no longer limited to just like a subsection. There's tons of different things. You have magic with you and stuff. You could be more of like a druidic warrior if you want, as opposed to, I'm just going to shoot my bow and arrow or swing my sword around or anything. And then like, if you choose the druidic order, you get like a bunch of druid cantrips to kind of go along with that as well, adding it to your spell class.
And not only that, from your spell class, you can actually change out one of your spells on a long rest. A huge deal because with the ranger, you used to only be able to change those spells when you leveled up.
Yes.
Which sometimes could be, few and far between, or you might be waiting a long time. So having that flexibility, especially because the ranger spell list is more utility than damage, I think this is super cool and makes a lot of sense and will be able to give a little bit more, again, player flexibility than it was before. And so I think that's a huge boon for sure.
Yep. Another new thing, tireless. Basically, a certain number of times a day, they could give themselves some temporary hit points, which is great. But as they call it, an always on ability. Uh, Rangers just, go through exhaustion so much faster. So instead of a long rest, just getting rid of a level of exhaustion, you lose a level of exhaustion with a short rest. Because again, you're well traveled, you're usually on your feet, you're running around, moving, doing stuff. So you don't get exhausted as much. You recover a lot faster, which is actually really cool. I think that that's great, especially if they stick with the changes to how exhaustion works that we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. It's perfect. It gives it so much more like oomph, the fact that Rangers are able to do this as well.
Yeah, because you can use it the 10 level thing. I've implemented it in my campaign, and it's been implemented now for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, it's much easier to understand.
Yes.
You don't have to go look it up, and even though it's slightly less flavorful than the old exhaustion, it is a much better. It's much better for mechanical usage than the old exhaustion.
Yep. Totally agree. Totally agree. Let's see. Moving forward, even more so. At level 14, as a bonus action, you just become invisible. It's just what you do, which is just really funny. But like the idea behind it is the fact that you basically kind of supernaturally shift into mixing in with your surroundings and stuff. It just happens. It's something that you get to do. It's part of your primal magic. It's supernatural camouflaging.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool. Blind sight at level 18. That's something that most classes just don't get to have, or most people don't get to have. But I love the idea of that on a ranger, being able to see and sense when there is no light, or when they are blinded, or whatever. I really like that a lot. As all the class, level 19, you get those epic boons at level 19 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have a whole list of those yet. I'm very interested to see. They keep like teasing them,
Yeah,
as like these big, like potent things. So I'm really interesting to see what the final list of that looks like. Subclass wise for the ranger, we have the hunter, the beastmaster, the gloomstalker, and the fey wanderer. The biggest ones, though, they said basically the hunter and the beastmaster are completely reworked. They're basically brand new subclasses.
yeah. I mean, when they say that they're reworked, it's brand new, completely redesigned. Jumping into Beastmaster, that's one of the things that, when you see a ranger, you kind of think, oh, you get a pet companion. This is really cool. I'm going to really enjoy this. And
the OG Beastmaster was terrible.
It was so much so that anybody who looked at it, I would just, as a DM, flat out say, you do not want to play this class. It will not be fun. And I want people to play what they want to play. But the fact that it doesn't work in any way that you would think that it was such a downfall. But this new version really does kind of grab onto that whole fantasy of, hey, I've got my beast companion with me. We're a team. We're working together. We're doing stuff. This is great. They're leveling up. They're doing things. The bond between you levels up. And the power really comes from that relationship that you have, instead of the old version, which was just kind of like, oh, well, here's the thing that's with me that it's just kind of there.
Will end up getting weaker and weaker as I level, because now it's based on the, more the Tasha's version, like an enhanced Tasha's version, where you get the stat block for the beast of the land, sea, sky, etc.
Yep.
And so it becomes more of that. You can kind of theme it however you want, that primal spirit, that connection, but mechanically it will level up with you, instead of being cool for a little bit and then being we always think of the trinket situation.
Yes.
From the original Legend of Vox Machina, where Trinket was decently useful for a little bit, but as they leveled, became far less far less useful,
Yeah,
and then
just a
she ended up
hindrance.
keeping him in her necklace the majority of the time because mechanically he would die immediately.
Exactly. One of the big changes too is the fact that telling your beast to do something is a bonus action, whereas before, if you wanted your beast to attack, that was your action. Now, use your bonus action for it. You can still attack or cast a spell or do something else while your beast is out doing its own thing. So it's kind of, in a way, playing two characters because you're able to, work in conjunction together. It's been designed that way. So it's not just, okay, well, everything I'm doing is piloting this one thing while the second part of me is just kind of sitting and doing nothing, which is really how the old one worked. You know, like not only was it like useless at a certain level, it really was just half of your time was spent doing nothing as one or the other. Or now you're both doing stuff, which is great.
Yeah. Um Next was the Fey Wanderer. Um as all the Fey themed subclasses, there's teleporting in there. They wanted it to kind of have like a mirror feeling between the Feywild and the Shadowfell. So you have, the Fey Wanderer and the Gloomstalker, which is Fey and Shadowfell. You can still summon your Fey creature. It's very similar to what the class was before. They just kind of, I guess, faded it up quite a bit, flavored it more. And kind of the same when you go into the Gloomstalker,
Yeah.
right? Really lean into like the darkness. You're the thing that the darkness is afraid of.
Yeah. This
Um,
the Ranger version of Batman, essentially.
yeah, changing more stuff, and the same with the Fey Wanderer, changing more stuff into psychic damage because that's kind of the theme. The Fey and the Gloomstalker, the Shadowfell Feywild thing. So changing more of that type of damage into psychic damage. Um, I said still great at initiative, but if you if you want to get a feeling for both of those subclasses, then they will be, you know, reasonably similar to
Mhm.
how they are now.
Yeah.
But Ben, that's not the case with the hunter.
No, no. So here's the funny thing is that like the hunter you would think would be, the ranger extraordinaire, but again, this was also very changed. Um, but the cool thing about this is that this is really like if you want to focus on, hey, I am the marksman or I am the combatant or something, the hunter is
So
really the
low
way to
magic.
go. Yeah, very low
Yeah, this is
magic.
very little focus on magic and more the I'm extremely skilled in this aspect.
hmm Exactly. Like one of the neat things is because you're the hunter, what you're doing in the hunt or combat or whatever. When something's marked with your hunter's mark, if they have any resistances, immunities, or invulnerabilities, because again, you're using your hunter's lore, which is what they call it. You're able to do this. You'll know if I'm fighting you there, Ryan, I would know that you are vulnerable to real life stuff. So like bludgeoning damage or piercing damage or slashing damage. Yeah, I would know and be able to do that. Or, oh, that thing's fireproof. You might not know it just by looking at it. Guess what? Don't use fire on this thing. You can help, the rest of your group with stuff like that. Hunter's Prey is something that's new. It is, well, they don't really say a whole lot about it, but basically it's a choice where you can choose to never mind. They didn't really go into it too much. It's just something new that you get. Hunter's Prey. If it's something like the Monster Hunter version, I forget what the subclass is called. That's in one of the books. Then extra damage when you mark something with like as your Hunter's Prey and stuff like that. But I don't quote me on that. We don't know what it is, so forget I said anything about it. Actually,
Yeah. So I mean, overall, it seems like it's probably an improvement on the 2014 Ranger.
Yeah. Oh,
Whether that is,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Just another thing. Splash damage is kind of a thing that they're adding to it as well, which I think is really cool. Yeah, you give yourself some resistance to damage. You're basically being the best version of a hunter to hunt something. You're Craven the Hunter at this point.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like I said, it's interesting because it certainly seems at least somewhat improved from the 2014 version. Ranger was widely considered the worst class, just period. Until Gloomstalker came out, then people would like dip into Gloomstalker for some of the benefits. I don't know. I am a little worried about the new massive reliance on Hunter's Mark, especially if you forget to cast it. That'll be something like you really will have to focus on remembering to cast Hunter's Mark now, because it just seems so built in and a lot of things rely on Hunter's Mark. It again, this was one of the videos where there were a lot less numbers. It was a lot more just like talking and a lot less specifics. So we'll have to see what the actualities look like before to see how they play before things come. But I mean, it does look like an improvement. Will it be enough? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, hopefully with how baked in Hunter's Mark is, it'll kind of be looked at along the same lines as a Barbarian's Rage. It's just like the thing to do. You're starting off combat, Hunter's Mark, Rage, whatever. Assuming you choose that concentration spell with that. That's one thing too, is that you can't lose concentration on Hunter's Mark from taking damage. That was one of the things that they talked about at the very beginning. So
not until level 13 though.
Oh, shoot. Never mind. I thought it was sooner than that.
No,
I remember
not until level 13. That's kind of where my worry is a little bit, right? You can still lose concentration on it. It's still a concentration spell.
Yeah.
It's still a D6. And then this is if you look at the thread, a lot of people are kind of making fun of this, and I do think it's kind of funny. At level 20, you get a final damage increase from Hunter's Mark. It becomes a D10. Oh. And it's just like, okay. I get thanks, I guess. So it's, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I've never played a Ranger. The fantasy playstyle just has never really like spoken to me. Like if I really wanted to do the stuff, this might give a little better, version of that. But I will freely admit MCDM has the Beast Heart, which does that like hunter or ranger pet type symbiosis bond way better than the ranger class / beastmaster subclass does. So we'll see. I think this was probably one of the most underwhelming class changes that I've read out of most of them.
I'm excited for it. I mean, the Beastmaster alone, I think, is worth it. Also, I kind of like the hunter aspect behind it. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'll definitely have to give them both a try somehow and sometime.
Somehow at some point. Yeah. It'll be a very good one-shot one.
Yeah, there you go.
Try out. At the very least, it does seem like it's an improvement from 2014.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah. Let's move on real fast to spells.
Yeah.
So this is super cool. They said this is the most spells they have ever had in a player's handbook, like period. There's over 30 brand new spells, many of which were not in UA at all. So that was kind of interesting. They revisited every single spell.
Yes.
Some making as big of changes as, full reworks, some don't need concentration anymore. A select few do need concentration now. Some have been changed to a bonus action because they didn't make sense to use your whole action economy there.
Yep.
Some of them have been like baked in more things. Some of them have been buffed. A select few of them were nerfed, and so it's a they basically looked at absolutely everything, and then some of them just had their wording tweaked, because one of the things that I really liked to hear is because they've been doing the sage advice for the last 10 years, where people have been asking Jeremy Crawford, hey, what is the actual intention of this rule, or does this little side thing work, or is there an exception here, is there a loophole here? So he said what they've done with the spell chapter a lot is taken that 10 years worth of that sage advice and baked those into spell descriptions and such to help alleviate questions that have been being asked for a very long time.
Yeah, which is incredibly handy. I don't know how many times I'll read something that a player is casting and it's an entirely different, intention for what they're going for with how I read it versus how they read it. I've been in the middle of combat and have done a search of Jeremy Crawford's Twitter just to find out, did he talk about this spell? This is the intention behind it or something along those lines. So that's going to be helpful. Having some spells, have their damage increased, having some new ways to actually use them and stuff, as well as having some that have been found in like Xanathars or Tashas or something just baked into the player's handbook is actually pretty great, which it's funny because I have, all the different various books on D&D Beyond. Like I never really looked to see where they're from. So a lot of these spells like Toll the Dead, I had no idea that was from Xanathars. And it's now baked.
I know, right?
The
It just
handbook.
seems like such a iconic type cantrip that you would take. But yeah, no, that's totally legitimate. They did say, and I think we mentioned this before, the summoning and the conjure spells have all been redesigned. They're all more the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything based thing now, that have the stat blocks and have the different things, instead of having to flip through the monster manual or summoning eight of something and like slowing down your combat and initiative massively. So that's super cool. Spells that were brought in and redesigned with subclasses in mind, which is cool, that subclass may get a specific cantrip or a specific spell. They mentioned specifically Steel Wind Strike was brought in, which my wife would be very happy about because she played an Abjuration Wizard, that you made judicious use of Steel Wind Strike, a very, very cool spell. But again, like you said, I didn't know where that spell came from. Like it's just there because I've got it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't in the base game, because if you think about it, a lot of what's in the player's handbook is going to be in that Creative Commons system reference document.
Yeah.
And so seeing more stuff is really cool, because a lot of the player's handbook will become SRD, or the new, 5.1 or 5.5 or whatever they, decide to call the new thing that they put into Creative Commons. So I think that's super cool as well.
Yeah.
They also. Oh, go ahead.
Speaking of not knowing where spells come from, they're actually adding more spells that are like named from actual spells. People. Like Jarlarzi, is that how they say it? Jarlarzi's Storm of Radiance. There's like a Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron, which is pretty cool, where you can just, summon a cauldron you get potions out of, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. And I love that. As well as, more stuff from like Big B, Xanathar, Mordenkainen, things like that, which are going to be coming in, which I think is actually pretty great too.
They also, said they buffed most of the healing spells.
Yes, which
Because a lot of
needed
them
to
did not
happen.
feel useful or worth casting for the amount that actually got healed, which I probably agree with for the most part. So that's exciting for the healers. They also reworked several of the cantrips that never got taken, like resistance, blade ward, um, may actually see play now. They talked specifically
Mhm.
about those, although of course they didn't tell us exactly how they changed them, which was a little annoying. Guidance is now you guidance a particular skill when you cast and concentrate, and while concentrating, that person just gets a bonus to any ability check they make using that skill. Um, Instead of just once in that minute.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's kind of cool. They changed all of the like shape shifting family of spells. So now, similar to Wild Shape, it doesn't give the whole second pool of HP.
Mhm.
It actually just gives temp HP. Um, so, and they didn't say exactly how that was going to work for like polymorph, shape change, true polymorph. I would have to guess that like so usually like when you polymorph, let's say I polymorph something into a frog or a sheep, right?
Mhm.
Usually if someone attacks that and got through that, 2 or 3 HP of health, then the person would change back and revert. I wonder if that's the case anymore, or will that happen after the temp HP pool goes away? Because that will likely get rid of the whole I'm going to turn the fighter into a T-Rex
Yeah.
thing now, right?
Which is way overdone, especially if you do the what is it, the summon Fae and have all of them be pixies, and then your entire party gets turned into T-Rexes and stuff. Like, not not how any of that was intended, but is definitely an exploit that you can do.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, so I'm interested to see how that will work
mhm.
because that certainly will be a huge change. Um and a huge difference in thinking, especially for casters.
Yeah.
Um,
So speaking of Baldur's Gate kind of informing changes and
yeah.
everything, Jeremy Crawford specifically said, it's like, I would cast Cloud of Daggers and then no one would go in the Cloud of Daggers. Well, guess what? You're going to be able to move your Cloud of Daggers now. Chromatic Orb is going to be able to bounce around, which I think is
That's
just
actually pretty cool.
really
That's
cool.
actually pretty cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And so like Produced Flame is going to be, it's been revamped and is not as annoying as it was and stuff. Again, that stuff was kind of really based on just interacting with Baldur's Gate 3, which in my current playthrough right now, I'm a druid, so I totally get that. Produce Flame is like, okay, cast and then do something with it, and it's frustrating. See,
Yeah,
we've touched on the arts. There's so much new art with everything, which I'm really looking forward to.
yeah.
One of the things they specifically called out, which I absolutely loved, is a wizard basically doing FaceTime with their mom using scry because they're both scrying on each other. So I just thought that was really great.
Yeah, that's super funny. And I did one of the things um they did mention parts of the spell chapter are actually primarily aimed at DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain spells that players will likely not use or not use very often. But an NPC might use it, spells like guards and wards,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But yeah, apparently lots of new art. That'll be super cool. Um, but yeah, they again, not a lot of specifics. Like True Strike. Is True Strike fixed? We don't know. we can hope so.
We know it's been looked at.
Yeah, because everything was. So um again, these videos are more almost teases than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have long, right?
Yeah,
We're
it's 2
only
months.
2-ish months off at this point. So It'll be very interesting to see what the final things for all these are.
Yep.
And then finally, real quick, I wanted to talk. They had a very short 5-minute long video on crafting. And they said this is one of the cool things they were really excited to add to the player's handbook. And it may sound small, but it actually may end up being very big because they wanted to make it easier to make stuff. So what they did was they redesigned all of the tools. Every single tool has a utilize action now. So now there's concrete rules on what you can actually use a tool for and on. And there are actually tell you what check to use or what, ability score to use when you do a tool check, which is super cool. But with the artisan tools, they actually now have a list of things you can craft, which they said will make it easier. They said you can basically craft all the basic gear that is in the gear list, like between the armor, the weapons, the different things. And there's also a way to make potions of healing and spell scrolls, which is nice. But they said they saved the actual magic item crafting rules. The new ones for that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Mm-hmm. But just making it clear, like adding rules for, every piece of adventuring gear from the table in the book and how to craft that. They've added some new gear. They've added some new crafting rules for tools that didn't have a gear equivalent, like cartographer's tools now can make a map item that can give you some sort of benefit.
A new item to the game.
Yeah, that's right. Which is hilarious that it did not exist as an actual item before. But, there you go. But they said this is going to be a great way to give new uses for spending gold or also stretch your gold further, depending if you have enough downtime for crafting. So it wasn't super long. They didn't go into super detail, but I love that all the actual tools are getting like concrete mechanics onto them and concrete checks for using them. So you don't have to guess what is, a brewer's kit check or whatever. Right. And now the brewer's kit should be able to actually make a list of stuff, which is cool. So big thumbs up for some more concrete crafting rules and taking the very nebulous tools and artisans tools and actually putting some stuff around them.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Oh Lord, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. It'll likely be like this again next episode, but thanks for sticking with us so far. Lots to go over, but I do want to get in a quick Monster Fixer NPC edition.
Yeah.
We wanted to go over something really quick, but something that would be very useful to everybody. Guards. Guards can be found absolutely everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You have them in towns, you have them in cities, you have them like guarding caravans or in guilds, potentially in taverns, just all sorts of stuff. Yeah, strongholds,
temples, anything.
As far as what guards look like, there is a basic rules, page 163, stat block for a guard. It is a CR 1/8, and it has 1 spear attack.
Scary.
It's about as boring as you could possibly get. So what I'm really hoping for that the player's handbook, because they talked about fleshing these out some, I'm hoping we see multiple levels of these different NPCs, right? Because a CR 1/8 guard is not going to be much of anything.
No.
Now, obviously, that makes sense in some places, but in like cities and stuff like that, probably going to need more powerful guards, or there will likely be more powerful guards.
Yep.
So what can we do to make these guys more interesting? Well, one, we can give them more to do,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, you can beef up their HP, you can beef up their armor class, depending on what they're wearing. It's very easy to calculate uh, their armor based on if you give them chainmail, if you give them leather, if you give them plate, right? And that with the hit points is a very easy way to do tweaks on them, giving them more attacks, giving them more interesting weapons to use as also. But I think just from an angle of what makes a guard interesting, I thought what would make sense with the guard? Rallying cry. This is potentially a bonus action or a reaction that they could do where they yell for help.
Yeah.
this is a this is a very like stereotypical guard type thing. Help over here, or the enemies have breached the gates. I need help. Uh so there's a lot of things you could do with that. You could easily have it be some sort of a check against a certain DC, and if you hit that DC, then another guard comes. Or you could have a descending thing where your first check is on a D20 and the guard comes at 16 to 20. And if that doesn't work and they cast it again, the guard comes at 10 to 20. And if that doesn't work, they cast it again, the guard comes at 6 to 20. And then if that doesn't work and they cast it again, it automatically comes. It's a freebie.
Mhm.
Or you could have that rallying cry and you as a bonus action and you roll a d4 plus 1, and that's how many rounds it will take for help to come.
Yeah.
So you can do all that sort of stuff. I think really helps make encounters more dynamic and interactive, because then as a player, oh, more stuff is coming soon, potentially. Um, and then Ben, I know you talked about uh, having some like adding some incapacitation stuff
Yeah,
to them because
definitely.
guards try to subdue you.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, more than anything else, uh, guards should always come in pairs because a single guard, not good. They're just not going to be effective. If more than one person comes at them, they're basically toast. So yeah, always at least in pairs. But yeah, I figured, having, some casters kind of mixed in as well, especially if you have a rallying cry going on with more coming, because eventually, depending on your scenario or something, they could be, or the party could be completely overwhelmed with tons and tons of support of, like 20, 30 guards coming. But if that's not the case, if you are just trying to stop the party or whatever from doing what they're doing, running away or breaking in or something like that, and you want to subdue them, then yeah, a hold person, charm person, sleep, blind, color spray, just like lower level stuff like that can really mess up someone's day. Like, imagine you shoplifted from Target and you're running out the door and suddenly the security guard casts hold person on you. You just stop in place. It's like, well, that's it. Done. Don't have to worry about getting away at this point. You don't really have a chance. Plus, it adds a little bit more dynamic combat to it, because if the players can tell who is concentrating on that hold person and they're still trying to get away, then they can target them, but maybe leave themselves open for an attack from elsewhere and stuff. So it adds just another kind of like difficulty to the board without being, super overwhelming and, deadly. So,
Or even in that same vein, if you want to do something like that, but have it less magical oriented, give your guards Sentinel
yeah.
as a reaction. That's a cool deal. Give your guards like a like handcuffs or like bola or something as a bonus action that attaches to one of their weapon strikes. So if that strike hits, the character has to make a either like dexterity or strength saving throw to try and not be handcuffed or try and not have their feet wrapped up so that they can't move or have their speed cut in half or something like that. Things that would hinder or slow characters down or stop them in their tracks, that the guard could add on potentially as a bonus action to one of their attacks if they're trying to go in for the capture versus the kill, would be really interesting as well.
Yep. And also environmentally, you can kind of play into certain things as well. If again, PCs are trying to break in somewhere or escape or something like that, if you know the environment, you can add certain things like a portcullis that'll drop down and kind of block them and keep them in, or, difficult terrain just so that they'd have a harder time escaping or getting in or whatever. Play that to your advantages, as well as having the guards be there as that extra added, protection for whatever it is that you're working with.
Yeah. And just to kind of add on to this, just because the base game doesn't provide stat blocks for interesting guards or very powerful guards, seeing as we're CR 1/8 here, this dovetails this monster fixture dovetails well into our community content shout out, and this is something I've used quite often. Adaptable NPCs from Grim Press. This is a series of books. There's Adaptable NPCs, NPCs 2, Calamity, NPCs of the Guild. There are several of these type of books in the series that provide you like generic type stat blocks for you to use that are a little more interesting than just CR 1/8 guards, right? Like they've got CR4, the King, the Cavalier, the Tomb Knight, like CR7, the Battle Master, the King's Guard, CR8, the Zealous Barbarian, right? CR11, the Temple Wizard, CR10, the Sun Knight, or the Oathbound Paladin. These are stat blocks that are nice, ready-made, higher CR stuff that you can easily take and then turn into guard type thing. Like CR2, the Pikeman. That is a guard. But that is a guard that is much stronger than CR 1/8, right? CR1, Battle Archer, right? That's still a much more powerful than CR 1/8. And they actually have more interesting attacks, actions, potentially bonus actions or reactions, usually as well. So, highly recommend. I've used these books many, many times in my campaign. So we will have a link to those in the show notes, because they're just handy to be able to pull, just like going into the appendix of the player's handbook, right?
Yep.
And trying to pull those generic stats. And again, hopefully the 2024 edition will be more useful in that respect. But until then, these type of books can be really handy if you're looking for a certain level of threat or something a little more hardy or interesting than what is in the base game for whatever generic NPC you might want to use.
Exactly. Cool stuff.
Oh boy, Ben. This is probably one of our longest episodes, and we are almost done. We have almost reached the end, but as always, we like to just talk a little bit, very briefly, about what's going on in our own campaigns. So before we close this out, Ben, have you played since we last talked?
Not in my main campaign. However, I did run a one shot for my niece's birthday, and that was
Very
actually
cool.
a whole lot of fun. So it was her parents, friend of hers, her obviously, and then Nevermore. And so it was the five of them. And basically, I kind of tailored it level wise to she had a character concept in mind, which ended up being, well, it would have to be level 7 to kind of fit the things that she was going for. So she ended up multi-classing a sorcerer warlock based on just kind of because in her mind she created a character first, said I want to be able to do these things. So I'm like, okay, cool, let's see how we can make it fit. So higher than I would have really liked for people, for the first time playing, but it's her birthday. She wanted to have a certain character. We're going with it. So it was her. Then we had a druid, an artificer, a cleric, and then a ranger as well. And basically, I did the whole, hey, you're all part of an adventuring guild. You got called to this place. And you're meeting up. They didn't know each other to begin with, because I'm like, let's just have them so that they can introduce themselves this way, have fun with that. So they ended up going to this hotel where it was like kind of like a halfway house kind of thing. And they, the owner of it said, oh yeah, I help provide, and find jobs for people, blah, 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 all this stuff. Well, 3 people that I've sent to this one place have not come back. And like their stuff is still up in their rooms, but it's been days. They're not coming back or anything. So they went up, checked the rooms. In each of the rooms, there was a job notice that was, maybe pulled from a job board or something like that. However, each one was written with a different handwriting, but said the same exact thing. So they're like, it's a little weird. So then they went to this bookstore to find out. The person who greeted them was one of the people who had been missing. And then, they're asking questions about it, where are they? I was like, oh no, everybody's in the back. Let me go get him. Goes into the back. A lot of time passes. No one comes back out. So then they end up going back there. They find a hidden entrance that leads down into the sewers. And long story short, there was an obelix in the sewers who was luring people down in there to eat them. So basically it would post a job. And then anybody who came in, for the job and everything, that was their next victim.
I love that so much.
Oh yeah, it was great. I had like in one of the first sewer rooms that they get to, there's 4 extensions of the obelix there, just basically all kind of speaking through all 4 of them at different times and at the same time and everything, being like, I just want to live, and kind of pleading the case of everything. But they're like, oh no, what you're doing is bad. And so at this point they hadn't noticed the tendrils or anything. So then I just said, all right, this one right here just basically melts into a puddle of goo and then just flies through the crack in the door. And then they fought them, and that's when they saw the tendrils and stuff, and end up kind of chasing it and stuff, and until we finally got to the final room, which I got the mini of it, of the ancient or the adult obelix from Miniature Market. So I just kind of plopped it down there, like, oh, because it's a big red blob with like a person standing in front of it. Like it looks just like the artwork. It's amazing. So then they ended up fighting that and everything. My niece dropped to 0 hit points. She got hit like just real bad and everything. But like overall, like everybody had a lot of fun. Like she was obviously brought back because we had like 3 people who could heal in the whole group. So, she brought back. But yeah, they ended up successfully defeating the obelix, and as it's dying, it's like, I just wanted to live, and just all this stuff. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. Everybody had a lot of a blast with it and stuff. And like as soon as I'm putting stuff away and everything, they're like, yeah, next time we play we need to do this. I'm just like, oh, I don't have time to run another one. So I'm gonna have to throw something together again, but basically restrict them down to like level 2 or 3 or something.
That's like the best thing for a DM to hear.
Oh, I know.
At the end, especially with new players, is when can we play again? Or next time we play, we're gonna do that. Like that's so cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
I was happy about that. But yeah, like I said, overall it was a lot of fun, and we had a good time. So they were pretty creative, and didn't fully follow the breadcrumb quest like to the T. They explored a little bit, which was great. I had like not just a straight railroad right to the end boss. I had like a branching path here or there, which they kind of investigate a little bit, but based on context clues and stuff, they're like, oh no, that's not the way to go, and follow along the right way and stuff. And it was pretty good. How about you? It's been a
Very
little
cool.
bit. I know that
It
you're
has.
doing stuff. Did you get a chance to play?
I played twice since we
Oh,
last talked.
oh
The
boy.
rare double session 2 weeks in a row. So that was super cool. Essentially, the party, after almost getting petrified,
Hmm.
uh, decided to wait out in that old vault they found. Turns out it was the vault of one Freudian Guilford.
Ooh.
Uh, Someone who during the war, very rich man, stocked up and closed the vault, and it apparently seems like everybody he told to get him out after the war was done didn't, or was killed,
Oh
or or
no.
forgot, or something, because he died there. But he had all of his treasure with him.
Ooh.
Um, so they had a little journal he was writing in, and it got like crazier and crazier as like the time went on.
Hmm.
And I had thrown in some breadcrumbs and hints, like he had mages build this place and whatever. So in his vault was tons of treasure. It's like gold, like items, everything. But as soon as they took something, this massive treasure golem spawned and
Oh.
began to try and kill him. And every turn just dropped little versions of treasure golems off of itself,
Oh no.
more and more. So it really turned, and these guys are on a clock, right? So it turned into a, how much stuff can we get before like we expend too many resources or lose too much health, um because we don't think we can kill this thing.
Yeah.
And I use the minion rules from MCDM's Flea Mortals,
Hmm.
because God, if you're using minions or want a lot of something, the rules for that they came up with for those are just chef's kiss. So what I had is I put a lot in this. I painted a custom I did this physical. I painted a custom treasure golem and a bunch of little ones, and then a bunch of treasure piles. And so I put them all out over the map. And then I had like 10 little sheets of paper that I'd folded up that represented items.
Mm.
They didn't know what they were getting. They had to go to a treasure pile, do a DC 10 investigation check, and if they passed it, they could find or pull out whatever item was in that
Yeah.
pile. They didn't. They rolled percentile and got coins, some amount of currency, right?
That's a good way to
So
do
they
it.
were, yeah, it was really cool, and there was actually some really cool stuff in there. Um, some very semi powerful items. Um, but they were able to get 5 of them, 5 of the 10 that were in there. Uh, which is great, because then they have them now for the thing that is upcoming. So they got them. They got past the threshold, and then they figured out that once they passed the vault threshold, the little golems would collapse and just disperse. So
Okay.
if they could get out of the vault, they were okay. So they were able to get out of the vault. No one died, although a few people came close because the golem was very strong. Um, so they got out. They took a long rest. During the night, some fun stuff happened, just like personal character stuff. Um, the stairs coming down into the vault had this beautiful carpet on them, and the warlock in the party noticed this little red shiny thing on the carpet, and she went over and started pulling at it. It was attached to like the carpet thread, and started pulling it out and pulling it out and pulling it out, and then realized that after she had pulled it out, the pulled out part read "kill him," which was a message from her patron for a certain thing she's supposed to be doing.
Oh.
Uh, so that was super cool. And then she got all panicked and like burned up the carpet. And so then that led to like someone waking up and a big old discussion with the party the next morning. It was really fun flavor type stuff. And this party is just such it's just been doing such amazing RP. I love them so much. But they basically left the next morning. They made their way to this big, Temple of Mistra that is kind of their final destination. They made it down this huge ledge across a huge crevasse. Someone uh uh rolled poorly and almost fell down into it, which is super fun because it's our older orc player. And so it's been kind of almost a running theme of, oh, old man, your arms are so weak, or or you shouldn't do that, you'll throw out your back. And
Nice.
that type of jesting. It's fun. So then they made their way in. They made their way in the side, like bottom flooded entrance to this temple. And because they did that, they went into a room that had not seen use for a long time, and it had a bunch of tiles and tiling everywhere. And I was like, you see a bunch of tiles and tiled floor. And then I took out a literal puzzle that I had made, a 28-piece puzzle, and set it on the table. And they were all just like, what? And so they proceeded to put together this 28-piece puzzle, which turned into a mosaic of Mistra.
Oh, cool.
So that was super cool, which then unlocked something that was hidden in the room. And it turned out to be this jar of essentially condensed magical essence. Like if you've ever read Stormlight, and they talk about investiture, or storing stormlight in spheres, or
Mhm.
that type of thing. Think it's like pure magic distilled down into an essence in a jar, like real crazy stuff, like
Cool.
insanely potent. They don't even know how powerful this is. They don't even know how it works, but it's a huge deal that they will have to find out a lot more about. So they got that, made their way through a secret door into a tunnel, and found this ritual chamber where these people who have been kidnapped are being sacrificed, pushed into this like pool of blood. And two members of this cult are talking, and information was gathered, and now they have to figure out how do they not only rescue these people, but rescue one of the player's sisters, who is four people back in this line of people waiting to be sacrificed. And I've been strictly keeping track of time this entire campaign.
Mhm.
So if they had actually waited one day longer, they would not have been able to save her.
That's cool.
I mean, they might not be able to save her now. There's a possibility of that. But if they had like taken one more long rest, or if they had delayed, one more day, then the whole scenario would have been different. And so I'm very excited. This is going to be kind of like the end. Next session will be like the end of the first arc. It's going to be like a very big climactic battle. I've got a lot of mechanics and a really cool battle map and stuff made specifically for this. So I'm extremely excited to see how it goes, and I wish them the best of luck.
That's very cool. I'm very excited to hear about what happens with that, because that's a tense place to leave off.
Yeah, it was just like one of those guys. It's way too late to start this right now. we're gonna have to end here. But it was a good ending spot, and I'm very excited to play and see what happens and see how they plan and how they try and work around the limitations they have to, rescue her sister
Yeah,
primarily, but also, as many other people as possible.
very true. That's awesome. Well, good luck to them and good luck with you.
Ooh, yeah. So that'll happen. That'll happen next week. But until then, we are going to call that probably one of the longest episodes of D&D Discussions that we have ever done.
Just a touch.
Just a touch. Thank you so much for listening, especially everyone who has lasted until now. Ben, why don't you tell everyone real quickly where we can be reached?
You bet. If you're looking to reach out and want to tell us your thoughts on some of these new classes, you can email us, send those to dndiscussions@gmail.com. Even more so, if you want to reach out on the social media, we are on Blue Sky Social. You can find us at DN Discussions. Ryan himself is at TBKZord. I am at Ben Bumhofer. If you would like to just, kind of chat with us over Discord, hey, guess what? A link to that can be found on our website, dndiscussions.com. Basically, as soon as we started having the Discord channel, we started putting a link in all of our show notes. So, hey, check it out. With that, dndiscussions.com does have every single episode we've ever done. So that is a very good place to look for that. Last but not least, if you want to listen to an actual play that I'm involved with, make sure to check out +5 to Hits. We are closing in on the end of Rime of the Frost Maiden. I made stupid decisions, and there are consequences. So definitely check it out, see what happens there. But with that, Ryan, thank you very much for joining me on this episode. As always, it has been a pleasure, and I'm super excited about the way too much information that we're going to be going over for our next episode, as well as the ones that we did for this, of course. But until next time, everybody, roll high and be good to each other.
Take care, and we'll see you soon.